Austin, thank you very much for waking up at before 7 a.m. that is to be on for this interview. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is the normal time that I get up, so it's perfectly fine.
Nice. Is that for work related or do you do other things?
First thing I do is I get up and I walk my dog, and then I start working as soon as possible. Yeah, I like to hit the ground running, get some
Hmm,
momentum early in the day.
right. And then what does the rest of the day look like?
I take I do most of my deep work early on in the day. The highly focused writing for clients and stuff like that, and then there's usually a block in the middle of the day where I get a little bit more sluggish, eat some lunch, kind of relax a little bit, and then I start working again in the afternoon. So I pretty much work all day.
Interesting. Explain deep work a bit more to the audience for those who don't know.
Yeah, so deep work is when you block out a specific time with zero distractions. You shut off your phone. I actually take my phone and I usually put it in the other room entirely, and then you sit down and you do work, and you don't check any notifications, you don't check any emails, you just do work for however long it is, 2, 3, 4 hours at a time. And you can get into a decent flow state, and you get incredible amounts of work done in that block of time.
Right. I used to do deep work as well when doing other jobs. Now this is taking up more of my time, which doesn't really require deep work. But yeah, definitely useful to do. And for people whose concentration maybe is low at first, it's something you can build up over time. It's not just it won't be every single time that you'll try to sit down and then you're just not able to work. If you keep practicing, you'll be able to reach several hours of deep work, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Initially, I think because social media kind of conditions our brain to have very short attention spans. So I think initially, when most people start doing deep work, they can only do it for maybe 30 minutes at a time.
Mhm.
But over time, you can sort of build on that and get it up to several hours. I can do probably 3.5, 4 hours of deep work now after practicing it for a long time. So
Right. Very nice. And now let's get into your wins. So I saw them in the copywriting campus. Could you explain what they were about in terms of the clients and the amount you made?
yeah, so I I'm on retainer for a pretty big client, a guy that sells courses on YouTube, and he pays me just a flat rate to ghostwrite for his email list. And I found this guy through just doing cold outreach, which is taught in the copywriting campus, obviously. And I've landed a bunch of other smaller clients, which are some of them are one-time clients, and some of them are they're people that come back to me and occasionally have work for me. So it varies quite a bit, but the bulk of the money that I make is retainer stuff, which is really great.
And are you comfortable revealing figures and in what time span?
Yeah, sure. So as far as time span goes, I joined the copywriting campus. I learned how to do cold outreach through emails, and about 90 days of doing that continuously every single day, doing the cold outreach aspect, I finally found a client that really needed a bunch of email marketing stuff done. So he put me on a retainer for $2,000 a month. This was the third client I ever got 90 days after joining the real world, which is pretty crazy for me at the time because I had never made that much money online before. So he started paying me 2 grand a month just to manage his email list, which involves sending daily emails, ghostwriting in his voice, and sending out promotions to the list. And then later on, he actually started paying me um, another $1,200 a month to ghostwrite his Twitter and a couple other, like his LinkedIn and a couple other things that he does. So that was a huge win for me. That was fantastic, and it's because of the cold outreach techniques that were taught in the copywriting campus that I was able to even find this guy, and then use my skills to actually solve some of his problems for him.
That's great. And how have things scaled for you since then?
It's been great. I've had months over 10K, which is it's so mind blowing looking back because a year ago I was working just a regular job and I had no real way of making money online. And then I discovered the real world. I took it really seriously, dedicated a ton of my time, somewhere around 5, 6 hours a day, studying the content and applying it. And within a few months, I started making money. And now to answer your question, how I'm doing now, I'm making probably, it varies a little bit, probably between 4 to 6 thousand a month, sometimes more than that. Like I said, sometimes it gets over 10K. Just kind of depends on which clients are coming my way and what kind of work that me and my new employee are doing. So I now have been able to hire an employee as well. So things are going great. I can see it scaling from here. So very excited.
Love to hear that. And in terms of experience before joining the real world, did you have any knowledge of copywriting?
I had very basic knowledge. I actually I actually used to follow some marketing guys online that talked a lot about email marketing and copywriting in that context. And I was also running an e-commerce store selling wood products that I made, but I just couldn't really figure out how to like apply these skills and make money. I just didn't really know how to do it. So I was just working this regular day job, really frustrated. I was like studying email marketing, but I wasn't really applying it because I didn't know how. I just didn't know how to put all the pieces together, so to speak. And then I joined the real world, and cold outreach was one of the main things that I was missing. I figured that out, and then I massively leveled up my copywriting skills in the copywriting campus. And those two things combined allowed me to start making real money. So very excited.
Good. And what, going back a bit, what were you expecting in terms of income when you first joined the real world? Because you said when you made your first 2000 and landed that retainer, that was very unexpected for you.
Yeah, I don't think I really had any expectations on income. I knew it was possible because when I joined the real world, it's much smaller than it is now. I think there was only a few thousand people when I joined, but there was people that were way ahead of me that were making upper four figures and five figures even that they were showing in the wins channel. So I knew it was possible to make money doing this. And a lot of those people, they gave me fuel. So I was like, okay, that's possible, but I didn't really expect that I was going to be able to do it so quickly. And so when I did start landing clients, I landed my first four clients within 2 weeks of each other. And one of them was the $2,000 a month guy. And so it was just, it was nothing. And then suddenly I was making money. And so it blew me away. I had no idea it was even possible.
What does your average day look like now compared to before you joined the real world?
Yeah, it's very different. So before I joined the real world, I was working a regular job, probably 9 a.m. to let's say 4 p.m., somewhere around there. And so my typical day, I would wake up early, maybe 7, drink some coffee, kind of just scroll social media. Then I'd go to work. Then I'd come home and I would just play video games all night. That's what I did every single day. And so when I joined the real world, the first 2 weeks I was in the real world, I didn't really take the content very seriously. I just sort of kind of perused it, maybe did a couple of lessons, but I was basically living the same old life that I was living. And at one point, I just realized if I'm going to make money, if I'm going to learn this, I have to take it seriously. So I started to implement a new schedule, cut way back on the video games, and my schedule became wake up early, really early. Before I quit my job, I'd block out 3 or 4 hours before I went to work, and I would just do a couple of lessons in the copywriting campus, and then I would do a bunch of cold outreach for several hours. And it taught me some really valuable lessons about motivation and about using your time efficiently. And so to answer your question, what am I doing now as compared to a year ago? Now I almost waste no time. I don't play video games at all. I don't watch Netflix. I don't do any nonsense because I'm just trying to build my company. The only thing I do that's fun and leisurely is I occasionally will, on a lunch break, I'll watch some YouTube videos or something like that. But for the most part, I'm really, really efficient with my time. And so that's been a massive, massive change compared to the person I used to be a few years ago.
Right. Love to hear that. And for perspective, how old are you?
I'm 32.
Okay. And moving on to how different would you say the material is within the real world compared to what you can find out on the internet?
Compared to the rest of the internet, yeah, you can find a lot of this information on the internet, but the problem is it's not as focused for one thing. And the other thing is you don't have a network to keep you accountable. So I'd say that's probably the two biggest things for me. Because like I said before, I used to study a little bit of email marketing and copywriting before I got to the real world, but there's so much information that's just scattered all over the place. by people that are of varying degrees of success. And then there's no like network to sort of keep you accountable on all those things. So when you join the real world, it's fantastic because you have all these campuses that are just highly focused on the one subject, and then they walk you through step by step how to do each step of the process. And I think that's what makes it a game changer for a lot of people. And then you have a network of people that you can fall back on to ask questions, and then the wins channel, of course, as well. Like I mentioned earlier, that was a big part of what gave me fuel, is seeing other people winning, and it makes you realize, wow, this is actually possible. So that's
I remembered a question I wanted to ask you earlier was, what was the biggest challenge you faced when you first started out with copywriting?
good question. I think it was it was that early stage, the first few months. It was probably the combination of switching from a kind of a brokey 9 to 5 mindset into the hustler mindset, working every day, the deep work. And also it was because when you first start out and you have no wins, for me it took 90 days or so to get my first win. That first 90 days, or maybe it takes you 6 months, maybe it takes you 8 months to get your first win. You don't really have that confidence because you haven't won yet. You haven't landed a client. So there's that doubt every single day. You wake up, you're like, is this even worth investing my time in? And it can be really tough to get through that because you spend months at a time sometimes with 0 wins, and then like in my case and some of the friends that I have in the real world, you suddenly start getting wins out of nowhere. So you got to just push through that and just keep going. That was the biggest challenge.
And yeah, you have the wins channel showing you what is possible, constantly wins flooding through. And yeah, I mean, I've heard that quite a few times where people just don't know it's possible until they actually see that win for themselves, and they really commit to it after that.
Yeah, that social proof it's really, really powerful.
And why did you make that leap or that step to actually join the real world?
It was probably, I saw Andrew Tate in an interview of some kind, and he mentioned it, and so I just joined it on a whim. And then, like I said, the first 2 weeks I didn't really take it seriously, but then it just sort of clicked in my mind that if I want to change my life, I gotta really actually try to put my effort into something, and that was what I put my effort into, and it paid off.
Right, for sure. And what would you have to say for what kind of an impact maybe Tate has had on you?
Massive, massive impact, especially on my mindset. Yeah, like I said, a year ago or more, I was just kind of just skating through life, doing the bare minimum. Like I said, I played a lot of video games, watched a lot of Netflix, scrolled a lot of TikTok and other nonsense. And Tate's the guy that really set a fire under my ass and made me realize, like, if I want to change and I want to maximize my potential as a man, I really have to cut out the bullshit, and I have to try. I have to actually put in the effort. And it's listening to his content and his interviews really solidified that in my mind.
Right. And before discovering Tate, were you comfortable with what you were doing? What was the mindset there? Or did you obviously feel like there was more out there? You just weren't able to really grasp onto anything?
Yeah, I knew there was more to life. I knew there was more potential. Before I discovered Tate, I was deeply depressed, deeply unfulfilled. I didn't really know what to do with my life. I didn't really have a lot of masculine guidance. My father is still in my life and has always been in my life, but he has never really, for some reason, just hasn't really provided enough of a strong masculine figure in my life to push me towards the goals that I needed to be pushed towards. And so finding Tate's content was sort of like finding that male mentor that was able to point me in the right direction. And it really did change my life.
And I can say the same from personal experience. I know I'm younger than you, but yeah, it's impacted me in a very similar way as well. And since you're on this trajectory now, where do you see your life heading in 6 months to 1 year?
I see nothing but crazy growth. Like I said, I joined the copywriting campus. Now I'm in the freelancing campus, and I've realized that the copywriting campus there's a lot of emphasis on doing cold outreach without having any kind of personal brand. So what that allowed me to do as somebody with zero online reputation, I was able to just go out into the world and just approach businesses and then get them to bring me money without actually having any kind of social proof. But the freelancing campus actually focuses on almost the exact opposite. They talk about you build your personal brand on Twitter or Instagram, and then you build up a following and you put out content, and then that brings in inbound leads. So in theory, if you combine the two strategies at the same time into one, you can get outbound leads and inbound leads. And my goal now is to build my Twitter account so that I can just start being much more picky with the clients that I'm able to get, do a lot less cold outreach, let the clients come to me through the proof that I'm building online, through the reputation that I'm building online. So that's what I'm hoping to do in the next 6 months to a year, is massively build out my social media channels and then turn that into a business of its own.
Love to hear that. And what aspect of that have you outsourced to your employee that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so I have one employee. She's my assistant. She does a lot of kind of like repetitive tasks throughout my day. Like, for example, I have a client that I manage his Twitter account. And so a lot of the stuff, like the engagements that we do for his account, I have her managing. I also have her doing some of the cold outreach stuff for me, like gathering potential leads and yeah, stuff like that. She just makes my job a little bit more efficient.
Right. Okay. Now, a question maybe you'll need to think about for a bit. What would you say have been the three biggest lessons you've learned from your time within the real world?
Three biggest lessons. Okay. Three biggest lessons: discipline, getting up, getting the work done, focus as far as deep work goes, being able to sit down and actually just get stuff done, cut out all the distractions. That was a huge lesson I learned. And then I'd say that probably the biggest lesson of all was belief in myself, because prior to joining the real world, prior to discovering Tate's content, I really had no self-belief in myself. I didn't really think I could achieve a lot. And my mindset was terrible. And now it's way better.
Is there any more to go into there in terms of the self-belief aspect and not having believed in yourself before?
Maybe a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what the switch was that flipped in my mind specifically. I meet people all the time in the, out and about in life that they just remind me so much of the old me as far as their terrible mindset. Like, they say stuff out loud all the time in conversation. Like, they say, "Oh, I'm an angry person," or "Oh, I'm depressed," or "Oh, I can't do this." They say these narratives all the time out loud in their conversation. And I remember I used to do that too. And I realized at some point, probably after discovering Andrew Tate, that those types of narratives are really toxic, and they actually you actually just internalize them into your subconscious. If you say, "I am X," "I am whatever," fill in the blank, you start to believe it after a while. So if you make a conscious effort to actually replace the "I am" with something positive, you can actually dramatically change your life. And so that's been a big belief shift that's happened, not directly because of the real world, but I think partially because of it, for sure. By being surrounded by winners and the Andrew Tate type mindset, I've slowly started to cut out all that negative narrative stuff that I used to say out loud to myself, and I've managed to replace it with just positive stuff. Like, I know I'm a winner. It's just a fact. I am. And now I have proof of it too as well. So now that sort of stuff sort of fuels me. So
Yeah, that's an interesting point. People don't understand the power of the words they use. They think if they just say a remark out loud, like, they don't really care about it, and they're not realizing just the extent of the self-hypnosis that the words you speak about yourself are, if that makes sense.
it
So
makes
you
perfect sense.
mentioning
Yeah.
that, yeah, you've seen for yourself. I
Yeah.
understand
I
from
like how you said self-hypnosis. That's a perfect way of saying it, because you really do internalize the stuff that you say out loud, and then you start acting on it, and then it sort of compounds into a long chain of behaviors, and then that sort of becomes your identity. But you can sort of reverse engineer that by intentionally saying positive stuff about yourself, and then you start to act on those beliefs that you've internalized.
right. So very happy with how this has went. For my final question, for people who might be on the fence about joining the real world, maybe listening to your story, they still think it might be a scam. What if you're lying, right? What would you have to say to them?
Well, there's really only one way to find out. It's not expensive to join. I will say that probably the majority of people don't push themselves hard enough. If you're going to join something like the real world, you really have to put in the effort. Somebody like me, I'm making a lot of wins because of the real world, but I put in the work. I put in the deep work. I put in the study, and that's the reason I got success. I've seen people join the real world and then they just kind of fuck around. They study the content maybe an hour a day. They do a little bit of, they do 3 or 4 cold outreaches for 2 weeks, and then they ask, why am I not getting clients? Well, you gotta actually do the work. And you have to expect that there will be weeks that go by or months that go by potentially where you're not going to get any clients because you just don't have the skills to do it. You got to just keep putting in the work. So anybody that's on the fence about joining, check it out, but be ready. It's not a magic solution. There's not a push button thing. You're not going to be handed money. You're not going to be handed success. It's something you have to take. You have to take. But the network is there. So you have the resources if you want it.
Right, well put. And for people who want to find out more about your contact you, where can they do so?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. Like I said, I'm trying to build out my brand. I share a lot of thoughts about the stuff that I've learned about business in the past year, about copywriting, about ghostwriting. You can find me on Twitter at Austin_Marland, Marland. And yeah, send me a DM on there. I'd love to chat. Ask me any questions you have, and of course, give me a follow. I'd greatly appreciate that as well.
Great. I'll add it to the description of the video. And Austin, really appreciate your time. I look forward to doing a follow-up in future once things have scaled even more. And until then, I wish you all the best.
Thanks a lot.